Hey, and welcome to another episode of Late TV Fights. Before we get started, I've got a bit of bad news. Unfortunately, Cody has vacated his belt, so it's up for grabs. So this has become a number one contenders match, and the winner is going to face Jay Burnz in December. So it's going to be fun. There's no pressure whatsoever on our competitors. But we've got some great judges here. We've got Kirk. Kirk, how do you feel about this match today?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. Usually I'm over in the movie side of things, so it's going to be fun to come see what's going on over here. Joe and Ryan, I got a lot of history with these guys. I've judged them; they've judged me. We've judged together, so this is it's fun to see those guys again. I'm excited to be judging with you and Kevin. I know these guys got three good judges at least. They're going to get the right calls, or at least the fair calls from us. So let's see how this goes.
And also here judging is Kevin. Kevin, how do you feel about this match today?
Similarly to Kirk, I know Joe and Ryan pretty well. I've debated against Ryan, and I know he's a tough competitor. I've seen a lot of Joe's matches, and I know he's also very well versed in debate. So I'm interested to hear what they have to say, and I'm looking forward to a good match, and looking forward to judging with the two of you.
And we'll get to the competitors. But introducing first, we've got Joe Harrison. Joe, if you win this, you get a rematch against Jay. Are you at all nervous?
I'm not nervous. I took my loss against Jay as a learning experience, so I'm coming back. I'm no longer leaving stuff in the chamber. I am out for this win. I want to face Jay again. I want that belt. I'm coming for that belt. I don't care who I have to take it from. I don't care if I have to beat Jay, beat Ryan. I don't care if I have to beat you even. I'm coming for that belt.
But yeah, I mean, I know that I'm nowhere near the belt picture, but Ryan, you've already had one match and you're already in a number contenders match. But how do you feel about this match today?
I mean, to put it lightly, pressure is on. Not because this is a number one contenders match for a title, but because it's just another match in general. No matter where I go, no matter what I want to debate in, I always have to look back at my matches and see what I did wrong. Who am I going to face next? I never want to know my opponent's weaknesses, mostly because to me, I want to feel it out. But when I learned this was going to be number one contenders match, a part of me wanted to rush as fast as I can to look at Jay, look at Joe's matches, see exactly where I want to go. But you know what? It makes no difference here. The only thing that matters is how am I going to convince you guys that I'm the right person to win here? Why I should be the right person to face Jay? And ultimately, in the end, if things don't go my way, there's only no one to blame but myself. Mostly.
But yeah, we've talked to fans, talked to judges. Everything is all set now. Time to get into this. Now, each competitor has got 4 questions that they got to prepare a debate argument for. And yes, so there's 4 questions. They get 90 seconds for opening, 5 minutes for a debate, and 1 minute for their closing. And they've got a 1 minute extension that they can use on either their opening or closing at any time of the debate. And yeah, those are all the rules. And then if it's a tie, if it goes 2-2 after these 4 questions, and they go to the speed round. And the speed round, we'll get to that if we get there. That the first question that we have is, what is the best Netflix original? And because Ryan is higher ranked, he can do his opening first. So you got 90 seconds on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
when it came to the question at end, the best Netflix original series, that is very open ended, and so I wanted to interpret it as a series that's not only meant for that shows some of the perks of it being on a Netflix streaming service, but also original content that was originally created that you may not or could not find on TV. Like I said, open to interpretation. And the show I chose was Big Mouth. If this show is this is an animated show created by Nick Kroll and Adam Goldberg. This show is based on their experiences as growing up in the suburbs of New York City as teenagers or pre-adolescents. This show is the basis of the show entirely is about growing up as a young, naive person, a boy, girl, gay, bisexual, cis, wherever you are. But the problem is that the moment hormones and puberty start to enter into your world, it ultimately shows you that things get complicated very fast, mainly because your hormones are a different beast and animal in themselves, which leads to the introduction of the hormone monsters. The hormone monsters are pretty much kind of like the devil or angel on your shoulder, depending how you interpret them. And ultimately, we follow our characters, how they can be able to navigate school life, their personal life, friendships, relationships, to family, friends, or even amongst themselves. I want to talk more, but I just want to get into this debate.
Lucky there's time. Let's literally just been on time right then. Joe, you got 90 seconds on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
So when you're talking about what is the best Netflix show, I went with something that is very much a show that is very integral to what Netflix is and the type of content you can get on it. And that is why I chose Atypical, which is a show that has just done its third season. All 3 seasons are great, and it tells the story of Sam Gardner, a young man who is on the autism spectrum, and it follows him and his life, his trials and tribulations as he navigates what it means to be someone with autism. And it follows not only him, but his family and his classmates and what the world around him is like, from his classmates to his coworkers to his parents, and what his condition means for them as well. And it's such a heartwarming story, and a story that you can just really get behind, and is something that you can just watch and really feel for these characters, and you want these characters to succeed, and you want to root for them, even characters who are even malicious at times. That they can learn from their mistakes, and they can learn, and that it's very much a learning experience for the show. And that's why Atypical is the best show on Netflix. And let's get into this debate.
The openings have up, and so time to get into the main argument. So you got 5 minutes on the clock. Time begins when someone starts talking.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting that we both pick shows on Netflix that both deal with adolescence, or pretty much 2 different interpretations. Although your show does have a certain specific theme to it when it comes to a character who's labeled autistic in the series. My series, Big Mouth, on the other hand, focuses on just young kids in high school. It's not limited to just one main protagonist as is. I have Nick and Andrew, who's based off of the creators. We have Jessie, a female character. We also have Jay. And it switches from protagonist to protagonist because we want to get a sense of how puberty is kind of affecting adolescents to very young and naive minds.
And but my show does not only have the lens of Sam as his character. You also have episodes that focus on Casey, his sister, and what it means for her. It's very much, the scope and the lens is not about what it means to live with autism. It is more autism as a whole, and it shows a picture of a very non-represented community, and that's why it's really strong on Netflix. While your show, yes, deals with puberty and stuff, it's more of just a raunchy comedy, and if I want something that's a raunchy comedy, I can get something different, and I can get better animated shows from Netflix, like a BoJack Horseman, or like
I think it's funny how you want to. I mean, Netflix sure it has a difference of raunchy comedies, but this one is kind of more. BoJack Horseman has certain themes of nihilism or like questioning yourselves. This one, the Big Mouth takes the idea of questions. Like it brings you back. Depending on who you watch, a general audience or a specific audience, it looks at how you were as a kid, as a child. The moment you start noticing you growing pubic hair, or you start feeling attracted to certain things that kind of turn something on your brain, and not just to mention you have these big hormone monsters that kind of represents that voice in your head that tells you to maybe there's a girl you like and you just want to push it further than you should be. I mean, everything is horrifying and terrifying, but at the same time, it's adventurous and at times funny. Most of the jokes may feel a little raunchy and blunt out there, but let's be honest, kids at that time, no matter what entertainment you were watching, not all the kids were seeing as wholesome as innocent. Some of them were kind of raunchy. Some of them were very blunt. Some of them had like negative opinion towards women, or some were very overtly sexual.
Yeah. And then the whole thing is, but that's the whole thing, and it's not very much of an adventurous plot line. We've seen, if you're going to say something's adventurous and bring up these raunchy characters and their thoughts, then there's something even that then you can't really say it's adventurous. It's been done before. We've seen it in shows that even though they're not Netflix originals, we've seen it in shows like South Park. We've seen it in shows like American Dad. We've seen it in shows like Family Guy. They've all done this whole. We've all seen episodes of it. While yes, it's not the main focus of the show, you can't really even say that it's the best because it's a very adventurous take on it. It's not really adventurous. It has two cool characters with the hormone monsters, but that making puberty into a monster really isn't that adventurous of a take. You can see that in a health class, in a lot of health class in their videos.
But these hormone monsters are pretty much how the kids are kind of seeing it as, because not just with the hormone monsters we have in season 1. In season 2, we are introduced to what the character is of the Shame Wizard, where season 2 drops into where you wanted to be adventurous with being horny as a pubescent kid. Now, season 2 brings in the concept of shame to where your own psychological mind is tormenting you because of how adventurous you want to be. There's even the character of Jessie, where she starts from season 1, wanting to be adventurous into her sexuality after having her first period, discovering her mother cheating on her father. It drops into where Shame Wizard not only shames her for what she has done, causing a divorce between her parents by confronting her mother, it also leads into depression, which is not a lot dressed very seriously in shows like Family Guy or American Dad that requires a joke. Sometimes when it comes to shame and depression, you just gotta let it sit and then maybe find a way to wrap around, which the writing does. When it comes to
doesn't though, it lets it sit there. It doesn't have anything really interesting to say or a very realistic take on it. And the fact that it even goes with the Shame Wizard saying that she causes her parents' divorce is problematic storytelling at worst and just downright despicable at best.
Well, at the time, if you look at this with the Shame Wizard, the kid herself was feeling very guilty. And here it is with the Shame Wizard as you see him push this girl. So the Shame Wizard not only affects her, but he affects everybody else in the cast, including adults. But the thing is, they focus with her and the young adolescents like Nick and Andrew because as their young minds, they're more open and perceptive to feeling bad about themselves, to feeling guilty by seeing themselves as monsters, while the adults... Ooh.
Right. That was definitely a heated debate, but now we're getting the closings. And because one went first on the opening, Joe's going to go first on the closing. So, Joe, you got 1 minute on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
What Ryan fails to see with his show is the fact that it's really much just a standard raunchy comedy that just happens to have what he considers to be unique storylines with the Shame Wizard and stuff, but it's not really unique. We see characters like that in other shows like BoJack Horseman and Rick and Morty, where we see these characters interact with it. What Atypical brings to it is showing an underrepresented community in a heartfelt, in a loving story where it's not using Sam and his autism as a punchline, as a joke. It's a very realistic and it's a heartfelt story where you get to follow these characters and they're all realistic. They're not caricatures. They're not over exaggerated, which is what Big Mouth is. Even from the character design, it's Big Mouth because it's over the top. It's exaggerated. It's not a realistic depiction at all. And while that can be fun at times, when you're looking at what is the best Netflix original, I want something that I can immerse myself in, that can really make me see something that I haven't really had to go through before and really show a lens of something and a different lens and a different scope. And with Big Mouth, you don't really get anything interesting or new.
Time. 1 minute is on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
Big Mouth is taking the psychological effects, the psychological emotional damage that going through puberty does with you, having these urgings, these feelings, because no matter how old you get, when you look back into your childhood, you kind of want to say you grew up fine, but ultimately in your own dark, maybe you were a little too overtly sexual when you were 12 years old. Sometimes maybe you should have held back when you were a kid, but you couldn't know that when you were young. Big Mouth is going through the awkward, ugly, and even downright horrifying moments in your life. Sure, it may not be original, but this is a show that utilizes the Netflix episode structure very well by giving each episode its own theme and its own thing to resolve or at least confront. Atypical, on the other hand, my opponent said that it gives you a structure or it doesn't go over. The first season of Atypical kind of put the character of Sam almost alien-like amongst the audiences, to where he had almost every spectrum of autism, or he was narrowed down. Damn.
There was definitely a great debate. That time to judge. Kevin, I'm going to go first to you on there. Who should get the point and why?
My point's going to go to Ryan. I wish he would have spent more time talking about his show, Atypical. He did start talking about Sam Gardner, about how he has autism and about how it affects his family and not only him but his friends and all that. But then once Ryan came in with Big Mouth, that's where it all went. Everything went there, and then everything Joe said about it being like BoJack Horseman and Rick and Morty, Ryan just kept hitting him back with how BoJack is more like about nihilism and questioning yourself. And I wish I had a show like Big Mouth when I was young, because there are a lot of things on there that Ryan brought up, like the shame wizard and depression and all that that maybe you don't get talks about with your family nowadays, that you could see on that show. So that's where I would go with my point, Ryan.
So one vote is going to Ryan. Kirk, where are you going to vote and why?
This is seriously tough. In all the matches I've judged, I would say this is one of the most even fights I've had, where evenly, I'm talking right now and I'm not 100% sure which way I want to go. They both did a great job of presenting their show and what makes their show special, what their show's about, and why it's not only a good show, but why it's important. And man, Joe had a lot of really good arguments for Ryan, and Ryan came back, and I think what happened was Joe's arguments against Ryan gave Ryan an opportunity to really delve into his show and explain why, while shooting down Joe's arguments, explain, he just kept getting deeper and deeper into the show and showing how there were more levels. And if maybe Joe had taken a little more time, like Kevin said, to talk about his show more, I would have gotten that too. But I think he just gave Ryan a little bit too much time to build his case and his argument. So by the thinnest of margins, I'm going with Ryan.
So if that Ryan's going to get the first point in this, because Joe's going to go first for the opening on this one. And the next question is, what is the most iconic TV series of the 2000s? And I'm going to go to Joe first. You've got 90 seconds on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
So the show I picked for the most iconic TV series of the 2000s is Lost. And the reason I decided to go with Lost is when you really think of what Lost did for TV as a whole, you have to explain how you have to go into the fact that it brought in this mystery box genre. You wanted to go in every week to figure out what's going on. What is this island about? Who's on this island? Why are they there? What even is it about? And the reason, and before people even say, but yes, that final season was disappointing, we're not talking about best or greatest, it's iconic. And when I think of iconic television series from the 2000s, my mind instantly goes to Lost because of just that first opening episode itself and where the series went with the different character lines and the people on the island and the flash forwards and the flashbacks. It brought so much to television as a whole, and not just terms of sci-fi, but mystery and characterization and storytelling and non-linear storytelling, that for those reasons it's just has to be the most iconic TV series of the 2000s. I will yield the rest of my time.
All right, there we go to Ryan. So reset the time. Ryan, what is the most iconic TV series of the 2000s? You got 90 seconds on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
When you're thinking about iconic TV shows, I mean, a lot can jump up to you. And just like the previous question, this can also be interpreted different ways. But when it comes to iconic, part of me, when it comes to TV in general, what series that stuck with you the longest, what also stuck around the longest. And in my mind, when it comes to iconic TV shows and the legacy that it had left, it is the original CSI, Crime Scene Investigation. This show debuted in the 2000s, and it has stuck on TV screens on CBS all the way to when it ended in 2015. This show was pretty much a cop procedural, but it gave us a different insight than shows like NYPD Blue or TJ Hooker. It gave us through the perspective of the technicians, the ones who are doing the investigative work, going through blood samples, fingerprints, really going through each and every bit of the crime scene, turning everything into a puzzle, piecing together exactly where and how did this happen, who's responsible. And this gave you a very straight narrative too, an easy conflict and a resolution as well. Something that people definitely needed around the 2000s when you have reality shows, sports like NFL, and also American Idol, Dancing with the Stars. So much entertainment plopping through you. CSI was something that was straight in narrative that you can see as a palate cleanser or something to just relax and sit back and enjoy with. And it led to so many multiple spin-offs from it. I'm going to stop here so we can get into the argument.
Once again, you stopped exactly on 90 seconds.
Trust me, I'm not mentally timing this. I just realized I keep talking and you're going to cut me off.
But we've got up to the main round here. We've got 5 minutes on the clock. Time begins when someone starts talking.
CSI really isn't that iconic because of the fact that it is simply a cop procedural, and that yes, it has spin-offs, but those spin-offs even couldn't really stand on its own, and that doesn't even make a testament to CSI. It's very much a standard cop procedural.
What spin-offs are you talking about? I mean, because you're talking about CSI Cyber, that would count you, but CSI New York and CSI Miami had lasted longer outside of CSI. Didn't even need a crossover until maybe later to the third, fourth seasons. Well, your show Lost, it definitely introduced the mystery box genre, but after season 2, it pretty much started to become stale because every episode you wanted to figure out the island, or did you wanted to see what relationships like Jack and Kate and Sawyer.
That doesn't make it stale. It's not stale storytelling. It was interesting because you had this entire thing. You could have episodes that focused on the mystery of the island, and you could have episodes that focused on character relationships. And with your show, you really don't get that because it has a very much a revolving cast of characters that you really can't really become iconic. The only person who I even remember ever being on that show is Lawrence Fishburne, and with that, I can't, like, there's no many really iconic characters or actors in that show.
There were iconic characters and actors. There was Gil Grisham, portrayed by William Pearson, who everyone mostly remembered from the Manhunter series when he played Will Graham. And also there were other actors like George Ink, who is the longest running cast member with this character of Nick. You also have Marge Hellenberger because she played the tough maternal instinctive character of the CSI Crime Lab. And the techniques that were used in that show, it was mainly a visual story. It was a visual storytelling mode when it came to crime scenes. It painted everything like a puzzle. Most cop procedural shows always gave you from the cop's perspective or sometimes the lawyer's perspective. This gave you the text perspective, really showing you what the hard work is done when it comes to solving crimes. Sure, the cops interrogate suspects, but they can't get any further without that missing link that the technicians required to them. Lost was great during its first 2 seasons, even the third season when it introduced the flash forward at its series end. But afterward, more questions kept being the audience kept asking for more questions. More people wanted answers to the island instead of introducing more characters. I mean, season 3 introduced Paolo and Nikki, characters that were supposed to be around since the first season. The fans immediately hated to where they had to kill them off by burying them alive, and also having to kill other characters off because drama that was happening behind the scenes of that show itself.
Drama behind the scenes does not mean it's not iconic, and the fact that it had the audacity to very much killing off characters permanently, something in the 2000s that we really didn't see besides victims in cop procedurals or the villains of cop procedurals. That is something that even makes it more iconic, that it was willing to take that risk and do it. And while you may say that it's because of the issues behind the scenes, that doesn't even mean that those don't even affect how it's iconic. Your show brought a cool aspect into a cop procedural and brought some fresh blood into it, but it's not iconic, because if it was so iconic, then that would have been something that carried on into other cop procedurals besides
it
just
did with its spin-off CSI Miami,
with the spin-off.
New York.
Not in the other cop procedurals picked it up because it wasn't that iconic. The mystery box genre elevated and started bringing it in. We see it with stuff like, we see it in other shows like True Detective. We see it in what is considered prestige television that came later, and it all stems from the fact that—
Oh, you want to talk about what True Detective and Fringe? They also use situations just like CSI with the enhanced images, with the following of the blood spatter. I mean, with Fringe, the whole thing was scientific study, breaking down things, piecing together puzzles, exactly what CSI did.
But it wasn't about CSI. When you're saying that CSI is the most iconic, I don't really think of anything that's iconic about it. You bring up—
There is iconic about it. The legacy it left behind. The whole thing that CSI did was when it came to the whole sit-around computer enhanced things that were done in movies, it brought that to TV and it made it better.
As Law and Order SVU did the enhanced images. Law and Order Criminal Intent did the enhanced images. You're saying it's so iconic, but another show, Law and Order SVU, did it before them, and they were able to do it better.
CSI had its own flavor to it. As I mentioned, it lasted throughout the entire of the 2000s. It remained in it was among the top 10 of Nielsen rated TV shows. Always in number 2.
Matter when we're talking about iconic. A show can be high ratings, but that doesn't mean it's not iconic. You have shows like Survivor has high ratings. American Idol have high ratings. They're not really iconic television.
And it kept being, either was past Survivor or it was always following narrowly behind reality shows. It was able to beat Dancing with the Stars, American Idol, shows that dominated entertainment television. And the fact that this show always remained within the top 5.
Time.
Damn it. Okay.
All right. Now we get to the closings. 1 minute is on the clock. Joe went first on the opening, so Ryan goes first on the closing. 1 minute is on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
Lost was definitely a good show when it premiered. It definitely got the whole world buzzing of the entertainment value that it brought before it. But ultimately, when the show kept progressing, it had to keep introducing new elements to make everything fresh in order to keep the show running, to where even the series creators themselves admitted that they had to cut the series short because they knew they couldn't keep answering the questions that the audience wanted. CSI, as I mentioned, was a straight narrative, giving you good conflict and easy resolutions during the time of the 2000s, not just competing against reality TV, but also against news. During the time of 2000s, the mind state of America was going through the war of Iraq, September 11th. We needed comfort. We needed reassurance that we can turn on TV and not have to see something tragic or have to hear news about nearly scaring us to death. CSI was a show that brought us comfort, and it continued throughout the 2000s, surviving characters leaving the show, character death, changing of time slots, the 2 lead actors having to leave.
Ryan, 1 minute. Joe, 1 minute is on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
Lost. The reason Lost is more iconic than CSI is because the mystery box genre is something that is carried on. And while, yes, you brought up that it can last throughout the 2000s, being able to have longevity doesn't really mean it's iconic. It just means that it could stay around. Having staying power doesn't really mean it's iconic. There are shows that only have 1 or 2 or even 3 seasons that stick around and have so much longevity and are more iconic. True Detective being one of them, being one of those shows that quickly comes to mind with that. Your show is just simply a cop procedural that just happened to add a different flavor with the whole enhancing images and crime scene investigation, just trying to really focus on a niche part of the cop procedural. And while it was interesting, it really wasn't iconic because even its spin-offs really couldn't take off that well. And the fact that the other cop procedurals at the time took that and did it better. When you're talking about something that's iconic, if you're talking about a cop procedural, you probably, or even something like that, something like Criminal Minds would have been a better choice. Something like NCIS would have been a better choice. NCIS LA.
There was definitely another hard-fought battle. You could probably almost just about see the blood splatter onto the screen. but Kirk, who are you going to give your point to and why?
I love the fact that these guys came from such different angles. I mean, if the 2000s were a 12-year-old kid, CSI and Lost would be their divorced parents. Lost would be the dad that only shows up like every other weekend and takes you out and does a lot of cool things and has a lot of fun and is exciting, but at the end kind of lets you down and is a disappointment. Where CSI would be the mom that you live with and she's there every day and she's kind of boring and she's kind of dull, but you can rely on her and she's dependable. So two completely different shows here, and they both came at it from a very good angle defending their shows. But I want to go with Joe on this one. And I think the reason why ultimately they both did a great job talking about why their show was good. But the one thing Joe did differently was talked about why his show was unique, why his show was different. He talked a lot about other shows that did what CSI did. Some may have even done it better. But I didn't hear Ryan say too much about other shows that he could compare to Lost, where that's really was Joe's focus, was its uniqueness and how it started something new. So I'm going with Joe.
And I'm gonna go next, but yeah, I'm gonna go Joe on this as well. Joe brought up a lot of good points especially about how with Lost you could instantly name a lot of the characters and all that. Even though Ryan did counter that by going that there's a lot of iconic characters there that I think Joe managed to sort of get that Lost is really iconic. Because even the fact that it started something new, and his hammering down on the fact that CSI is pretty much a procedural that has been done many different times in the past, and how Lost did sort of do something new with how it had inspired other shows. But yeah, so Joe's getting the point on this. But with that, we're going to go to the next question. And the next question is going to be, what is the best superhero TV show theme? There's definitely a lot of good choices out there. But Ryan's going first on this one. You got 9 seconds on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
The best superhero TV show theme needed to almost exemplify the TV show that we were going to get ourselves involved in, but at the same time be something that the moment we heard this theme, it would immediately get us hooked, wanting us to watch the TV show, or even a theme that's stuck in our heads. And the show I picked was of the 2000s animated TV show Justice League. The opening of this theme, how it has its orchestral with the horns, it slowly starts, and then it blasts on in full with this taking full advantage of what classical instruments can do. Having the whole thing with the intro beginning, it slowly shows you having different intro themes when it comes to Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, Superman, Hawkwoman, Hawkgirl, or The Flash. In the midst of the opening sequence of the Justice League TV show, the moment Superman blasts down a wall and flies over, it has this nice boom of orchestral music that gets you even more excited because you feel how heroic it is, how uplifting this show is going to be, just like the drama that's going to happen. But the fact, no matter in the end, these are superheroes. These are people we want to watch. This is something we want to get ourselves invested in. I'm going to stop here.
All right. So, Joe, you got 90 seconds on the clock. Time begins when I actually reset the timer. So when you start talking.
The show I decided to go with for best superhero TV show theme is obviously X-Men the Animated Series. Just those opening few notes. Da-na-na-na-na-na, da-na-na. It's so it's just amazing. And the fact that whenever I hear those notes, I know it's X-Men the Animated Series. I know what I'm going to get from it, and it's just so action-packed, and it's an action-packed theme. It's an exciting theme, and it's an exciting movement in the entire opening when you're going around to each of these characters as they're fighting, and you're seeing it, and that's just an exciting and upbeat and a powerful theme song that is the likes we have not been able to really hear since. It is the best superhero TV show theme song because it's been so hard to even try to replicate that essence and that essence that it has become to be associated with. And I'm going to yield the rest of my time.
Anyway, 5 minutes is on the clock. Time begins when someone starts talking.
I couldn't even remember the opening notes of Justice League Unlimited at all. It's not really that.
I'm not talking about Justice League. I'm talking about the original Justice League.
The original Justice League?
The fact that you have to get these two kids. I mean, seriously, you want to talk about X-Men? X-Men, well, it has a great opening theme. The problem is, during maybe like a minute into it, it starts to overlap and repeat itself with a da-da-da-da-da-da. With Justice League, it changes its tempo. It switches throughout different orchestral things. Other than hearing horns, we're also hearing low drum beats. We're also getting a sense when you listen to it, there's like a little bit of violin or at least a cue bass that you might hear in the background, giving you a sense where it's slow. It moves throughout you.
It's not really that. And the plus, I think you also hurt yourself when you said the fact that I got Justice League Unlimited and Justice League themes mixed up. Yeah, how can it be the best when I can mix it up? And I'm a huge superhero fan. I watch both of these shows, and I can easily mix up their two theme songs. It's not that memorable. It's not the
Then
best.
You're not that much of a superhero fan if you mix them up. I mean, the difference between these two is that Justice League uses a little bit more of an electrical riff to it. The original one uses classical themes to it, and not only does it open its show in such a powerful moment, it also matches to its credits as well. Where when it comes to the credits of X-Men, it just takes the same theme over again. The credits and when the ending of an episode of Justice League happens, it's slightly different to where it's
not the show's opening is not the show's theme. Though, and while you can say that overlapping is an issue, it's really not, because it flows with it well. Well, yes, you say it's cool and interesting to go with these whole with these different orchestral themes. It really doesn't. It kind of takes me out of it, to be completely honest, because when I'm thinking of a theme song, I want something that's going to connect me to the entire show in its entirety, and not just take me out of it for those moments.
If an X-Men animated theme, then I will give you a better one than the X-Men that America. The Japanese one is much better. It has a faster beat to it. It has an even more action-packed theme to get you into the show. My theme for Justice League works because of its heroic, because the song is used to give you a sense of inspiration, a sense of power when it comes to every instrument that's used, when it comes to conducting it. Even when I hear it, I can almost imagine myself conducting an orchestra while moments of the show is playing in my head, seeing Superman rise up, taking on Lex Luthor, seeing Batman escape, driving down in his Batmobile, or having Wonder Woman block bullets with her wrist.
You're talking about the opening sequence, and that's not really what we're talking about with the
The sequence only enhances the theme. If you want to talk about X-Men being great, X-Men received a plagiarism lawsuit from a Hungarian composer because it matched the same theme that he did for a 1980s crime procedural.
Listen to it. Does not even sound remotely similar. I knew you would bring it up, and I've listened to both. They do not sound remotely similar. And here's the thing: a theme song should be able to stand on its own. Yours, when I hear it, I'm just going to be like, oh, cool, it's some interesting little orchestral piece. Not really that impressive. But when I hear I'm going to be like, yeah, this is something. This is amazing. This is something I can get.
You're going to tell me orchestral pieces is not iconic? Go to Star Wars. Go to Star Trek. Go to even some of the CW shows. They use orchestral horns in their theme, even though they mix it with electrical. Classical elements that's used into superhero themes makes it last longer, makes it more impressionable. While X-Men, the anime series, is great, ultimately, in the end, when you keep hearing that, it plays like an earworm to where it's annoying. This is an earworm I want stuck in my head because when I walk into a room, I feel powerful when I hear this play. You're making me feel
someone
like
who is
I'm
also-
rushing somewhere, like I'm running late. Like I have no, like all of a sudden it's like, that's like doing thoughts going through my head. I want things to slow down my mind to where I can feel something.
Here's the whole thing. When I'm thinking of superhero shows, I don't want something that's slow and drawn out. Superheroes are supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be action, and they're supposed to be, and you get that. While you're talking about these slow orchestral swells, and they don't really have those punchy moments, and you have to have those punchy moments. As someone who has trained in classical music, those punchy moments don't come in Justice League other than for a cute little visual cue. But with X-Men the Animated Series, it's just a rip-roaring, electrical, fun, amazing time that you have those moments where it slows down and it's and you can't really even have a memorable part. The horns, I can't remember any notes at all from...
You are really not listening to it then. I mean, this thing can also be adapted to...
We do have closings to go. Ryan went first on the opening, so Joe's going to go first on the closing. 1 minute is on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
I have listened to the Justice League theme. It's not really that memorable. To say that because I don't really remember it or remember the moments of it means that I haven't really truly listened to it. Does not mean it's not, and it really isn't the best superhero TV show theme because I can get it mixed up with Justice League Unlimited, and it's not even the best of the DC show themes. You can have Batman the Animated Series has a better theme. Teen Titans, even though it has a better theme. Superman also has a better theme. But when you're thinking about superhero shows, X-Men the Animated Series jumps out at you, and it's so iconic. And no, it did not plagiarize because when you listen to it, it stands on its own, and it is one of the most memorable. And it can stand on its own and without anything else. And I will yield the rest of my time.
Ryan, you've got 1 minute on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
I believe Justice League the theme to Justice League works on its own because when it begins, it's all about slowly bringing in certain moments, certain notes from different orchestral sounds, and then unifying it, showing that when it comes to this Justice League TV show, it's not about this individual parts. It's all about unifying. This is why I like listening to the slow drum beats that happen at the beginning, the horns that bring into the crescendo, the violins that slowly play in the background. With X-Men, though, it is great, but it sets a very high bar. You wanted to talk about Batman Animated Series, Superman, they both use great orchestral themes to where Justice League can either match it or exceed it. Nothing that Justice League sets amongst itself is going to fall. Every show that came after X-Men animated wise, it has never been able to top the opening theme to it. And if you wanted to talk about superhero themes, this is a superhero theme. It is powerful. It is uplifting. It is inspiring to where I have mentioned I can imagine myself playing the orchestral theme or walking into a room, having this blare into the background, getting people's attention.
There was just another great battle here, but I'm going to go first on this one. This is legitimately tough. Ryan and Joe are not making it easy on us judges, that's for sure. But I'm going to give my point to Joe. I mean, his points he brought up about the X-Men theme being iconic, instantly recognizable, and all that, I think was strong. And he also brought in the fact that when you hear the Justice League theme, you get confused with Unlimited. It is easy to confuse the various Justice League themes. So my point's going to go to Joe, but I'm not the only one here. But Kirk, who are you going to give your point to and why?
When I first saw this question, I was kind of upset because sometimes there are questions that just have a right answer. And it's really not fair because there's one right answer. And off the top of my head, I thought, okay, X-Men is the right answer for this. That, like Joe said, that's you really can't top that. But they still had to fight it out. And Ryan did a great job talking about his song. Joe focused a lot on the iconic, how unique it is. But the one thing that Ryan gave me a lot of adjectives. Ryan gave me a lot of verbs. He told me a lot about the theme in his explanation, in his argument. I learned more about the theme. I listened to both of these before we came into this just to get an idea of what they would be talking about. But he gave an explanation of how his theme worked with the actual sequence, how it enhanced the sequence. And like I said, he gave me those adjectives that told the story of the theme. So he had a real uphill battle here for me as far as I was concerned, but I'm giving my point to Ryan.
So we're tied up here. Kevin, it's all on you. Who are you going to give your point to and why?
This is incredibly hard. Joe, you brought up some excellent points. First off, I will preface by saying I try to come into this as unbiased, as unbiased as possible, not what I like. Joe, you brought up great points about how X-Men has an action-packed, exciting theme. And you did bring up the movement as you go to each hero, and then when when Ryan brought it up, you kind of rebutted that, so that was kind of a knock against you. But and then you said his didn't have any punchy moments. Yours has that. You didn't bring that up. But Ryan, you were so passionate, man. You talked about how the horns and how it rose, the booms, it gets you excited. You talked about the composer. You talked about how the X-Men, it repeats after the crescendo. You're so passionate. I have to give my point to Ryan.
So Ryan gets the point on this one.
Even though I love the X-Men theme.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this. Brooklyn is probably really going to love that debate and hearing Ryan talk about compositions and movements because that's the way it is. But now we've got the last question here, and Joe, you do need this point to force the speed round. And Joe is going to go first on this one too. But the question is, who is the best side character in the Arrowverse? And 90 seconds is on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
I am going with Cisco Ramon from The Flash. He is one of the funniest characters in the entire Arrowverse, and the fact that he plays well off against Barry Allen and Iris and everyone in Star Labs, and the fact that he is a genius, but he's a genius who doesn't seem like a stuffy, boring genius. He's a mechanical engineer who has these knowledgeable moments and has these great ideas and these great plans that he shares with the entire team. And he not only that, but he has these comedic moments where you can really laugh and you can relate to him. He's kind of what the audience can kind of relate to, and that's what makes him the best side character. Is he's kind of the audience's way into this whole world of superheroes where he's just like, I don't know what's going on, and I'm supposed to be like a genius. And that's kind of how we feel when there are superheroes, is we could be just like, I'm really smart, but now that there are superheroes and there are powers around, I don't know what's going around, but I'm going to try to understand it. I'm going to be here for my friends. I'm going to help people out. And that's why Cisco Ramon is the best side character in the Arrowverse.
So, Ryan, you got 9 seconds on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
My pick was John Diggle. This man was introduced in the pilot of Arrow, and from there on in, he has remained a consistent figure in the TV show Arrow, to where he has bled into other TV shows like The Flash. And while John Diggle, he is pretty much, at first, he's kind of painted to be as this ally who's going to be sort of out, kind of like Alfred. He's going to be leaning on him to give advice. But they changed the expectation on there to where John Diggle has a background as a soldier in the military. He has his own tragic past. He has a strong moral code to even in later seasons of Arrow, to where you have to kind of question it. John Diggle, even his popularity became so strong that the fans wanted secretly for him to be Green Lantern, to which that might pay off in this upcoming Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover. But John Diggle, he has remained a steadfast pillar in the Arrow show, because when it comes to Oliver is not that easy to get along with. He's brash and he comes off a bit jerkish. John Diggle is that guy to put Oliver on his toes, and he matches him physically to where Oliver can't always overpower him. Stop.
Who is the best side character in the Everest? And 5 minutes start when someone starts talking.
Look, Joe, Cisco may be a good character, but most of the comedy that comes from it is either doing lots of pop culture references or always pointing out something immediately going, whoa, that's weird. And while it's great, over time, especially when the Flash continues, this is a man who is supposed to be a genius, but ultimately he's always painted as a second fiddle there's no area to grow from him. I mean, sure, you might get powers later on, but
and there is areas to grow. And the fact you bring up his powers, and that's really what makes him one of the best side characters, is the fact that he gets these powers, and then he struggles with should he keep them or not, and he decides, he's like, I want to be able to live a normal life, and he kind of shows what a realistic kind of person is. I know that if I got superpowers, I wouldn't really know what to do with them, and I would give them away. I wouldn't really know. He's kind of he's a different take, and that's what really makes him the best. Is we see all these different people who, when they get powers, they're just like, I'm going to use them. But he's someone who uses them, and he realizes, I'm not cut out for this. I need to live a life. But with John Diggle,
the truth is, we get that better with Caitlin Snow than we do with Cisco. Because early on in season 1, Cisco's always like, powers, cool, Flash, run, look at your speed. And of course, the moment he does get that slight doubt in him. But the problem is that it was better handled with Caitlin because she wanted normality. She had a boyfriend before the particle accelerator exploded, and ever since then, she's a better sidekick compared to Cisco. Diggle, from the start on in, this is a man who just, in a sense of normality, but he's thrust into being a co-conspirator to a vigilante in Oliver, to the point when Oliver asks him to join, Diggle says no. It takes convincing with him. Cisco was immediately on board. That push and pull between Diggle and Oliver is what works, because Oliver is bullheaded, and sometimes he needs to be pulled back in order to
push and pull is more on Oliver as a character than it is on Diggle as a character. Diggle really isn't the best character. He's there to just really show what Oliver is and to be a foil to him, but that's not really interesting. But with Cisco, you get someone who he's there for more than just to be like, oh, laugh. He's there to be a heartful character, and Diggle doesn't really have the heart. He only has this.
He has the heart. When they introduce Felicity into the group, Diggle is, when Oliver, in the episode The Odyssey, when Oliver is shot, it is mainly through Diggle Felicity is getting an understanding of Oliver. Diggle talks about his time is passed in Iraq, to when he incidentally shoots a teenager because he was protecting this despot, and in that moment there defined him to where it convinced him to join Oliver, because he feels that he did something wrong morally in his past, and being with Oliver helped to correct that. And even then, the show continues to challenge his morals, to even when he becomes a side character or a hero in his own right as Spartan, even then he is struggling on what kind of hero he wants to be while he's in the field doing it. Cisco, with his powers, can easily pop in and pop out. Diggle, he is on those front lines, showing back to his past as a soldier.
But going back to, yes, their powers, and while Diggle is a frontline character, the fact is his moral compass, and that's all you can really say about him, is he has this moral compass and this inner struggle. That doesn't really make him for an interesting side character, because we even get that in Oliver. Everyone in Arrow has a moral compass and an inner struggle. They're all very.
Diggle is the most evenly lined, though. As I will say, he's most
evenly aligned doesn't mean you're the best side character. When I think of best, I want someone who I can really relate to, who I can have fun with, who really brings out the best in the other characters. Diggle really doesn't do that. He shows the ugliness of it, and that's good for storytelling, but that's a storytelling aspect.
Exactly, for storytelling. You see the ugly side of a character, meaning that there is some room there to grow from there. In the early seasons, Oliver is so focused on his hit list of killing people. Diggle tells him there is more he can do by showing him to petty crimes that ultimately affect everyone else.
You can put any other character in that, because it's a storyline-based thing. It's not.
No, they tried that with Felicity. She tried to shut him down. Diggle is at least trying to guide Oliver to become a better person. Even when Oliver has his moments on his low, Diggle notices that what he's doing out there might be ugly, might be dirty and bloody, but is getting results. The Flash, unfortunately, Cisco, other than providing Barry with scientific devices, or at least being the man in the chair, Cisco is not always giving the best advice to Flash, or he's not even trying to help Flash be a better hero.
The best is because if you have a character who always has the right thing to say, he's a stale character. He's one-dimensional. Cisco is layered. He sometimes says the wrong thing. He sometimes doesn't know what to do or what's going on. But with Diggle, how can he be the best when he's just there to be this thing that just shows the best in thing and what the good moral compass is. That is something where you can design any character. Like
I want to jump back to what I said that like challenges him, his moral centers challenge. In season 2, they tie him to Deadshot, a man who killed his brother.
Time.
Oh fuck.
Alright. So we're down to the closings. 1 minute on the clock. Ryan's going to go through.
Can I use a 1 minute extension?
You may. 2 minutes is on the clock. And Ryan, you're going to go first on this one because Joe went first on the opening. But 2 minutes is on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
John Diggle being a moral compass, a moral center to Arrow is something that's needed because Arrow shows you a gray area when it comes to being a vigilante. And Diggle is more of the guy who sees everything in black and white. So first season, he's being challenged to accept the gray area. The second season, he has to not only accept it, but get himself be a part of it, ingrain himself into the gray area. So maybe he can see some good in humanity. He sees the good in Deadshot, a man who killed his brother, a man that Diggle loathly hated. He wanted to kill himself. But when it comes to rescuing his ex-wife, who later on in the series that they not only grow closer together, they have a family together through Lila, who becomes the head of Argus, a secret organization that also deals in gray. Diggle is always having his ideals challenged in every season, to the point in season 4, when they do the thing of bringing his brother back, Diggle gets so frustrated on who his brother is, the portrayal that his brother did to him. Diggle ultimately accidentally through frustration kills his brother, to where it sets him on a path of his own moral redemption, trying to figure out who he is again. They don't delve that much into Cisco's past. After season 1 or season 2, they push on through there by saying his brother was killed off during Flashpoint. At least with Diggle, he has to live with the repercussions of his actions of killing his own brother. And not only him becoming more gray, he also feels more dirty, more corrupt. The fact that he can't separate himself anymore from this shows the internal tragedy that Diggle has to go through, and yet still in the end, he comes out on top of it with a better understanding of Oliver and the choices he has to make, to where in the much maligned season 6, he was the Green Arrow at a time. He had to make the tough choices. He had to keep secrets. And even then, when he and Oliver clashed, Diggle still understood the journey, the mission that Oliver had to do, to where now Diggle and Oliver are not only the best of friends, but Diggle, as an original character for Arrowverse, has crossed over into comics, into the New 52 of Green Arrow, into the Rebirth comics edition of Green Arrow.
2 minutes.
I figured you had to do this, but 2 minutes is on the clock. This potentially could be your last 2 minutes. Time begins when you start talking.
The thing with when you talk about John Diggle, you talk more about the storylines with him and not the character. And with the character, and when you're talking about best side character, I don't need the storylines, because with the storylines, you can really put any different character in. Diggle is only there to really be a moral compass and a foil to kind of show the ugliness and show what Oliver can do to be better. That really isn't that interesting of a best side character, because you can design any other character. As an original character to be brought into the Arrowverse, and just for that purpose, he could have, that doesn't really mean, because you could have already had a different existing character to do that. But with Cisco Ramon, what you get is a guy who you really believe is someone who is realistically existing in this world. John Diggle is very much the perfect person, and that's not what makes you best, because when you are perfect and you do not have these flaws and have such a strong moral compass, you really aren't really that relatable. And when you want something that is considered the best, I want a relatable character. I want someone who is funny, who deals with this whole, do I want these powers, do I not, do I want normality, do I have these good ideas, what is going on? And yes, you may say that he is only pop culture references and quirky one-liners, but he's not. He is someone who is very much in this. He's in this life because he knows he wants, even though he wants some sense of normality, that this is what he needs to do in order to help and be the best friend and best partner he can be to Barry Allen the Flash. But with John Diggle, all you really get is, when you bring him up, I just think he's a very generic standard character that you can put a different name on him and you could be that. Yes, Deadshot killed his brother. Deadshot could have killed anyone else's brother. That's not something that can be really unique to him and really bring it. It's a storyline based character, and that's not really what makes for a best side character. A storyline based, when a character is developed to serve the plot, that really isn't what makes a best side character. Cisco is not designed to serve the plot. He's served to be a fully fleshed out character that interacts with this world believably, and that is what makes him the best. With John Diggle, all you get is someone who is very standard.
Time. This is definitely on track to be one of the best matches we've done. Probably second to the championship match, but still got to decide a win on this one. But Kevin, I'm going to start with you. Who are you going to give your point to and why?
Yeah, this is hard. Wow. I got a lot of notes here. Okay, I'll start with Joe's. So Cisco, I like how you brought up that he plays well off of everyone. The audience relates well to him because we feel like we're all smart, and if he doesn't know what's going on, then it makes it okay that we don't know what's going on. You brought up how Diggle. You say Diggle has no heart. Ryan did counter that by saying, he accidentally killed his brother. He has to live with those actions. He has a strong moral code. Let's go into Ryan. The stuff you brought up about John Diggle's challenging his morals constantly, even as Spartan, and then how you went against Cisco, not always giving Barry the best advice. I think I'm gonna say this. In the last 2 minutes of Joe's, you said how you could plug in any other character, and John Diggle's perfect and unrelatable character. He did accidentally kill his brother, and he does have to live with those actions. So that's not a perfect character. So I'm going to give this point to Ryan.
Kirk, who are you going to give your point to and why?
Yeah, this has been a great fight. These guys both good at all, and they're they both deserve all the credit you're going to get for this. But yeah, they both did a great job. And I'll just say this: I really don't watch the Arrowverse show, so I was basically just going on what they were telling me and the information they were giving me. And they both did a great job of telling why their character is a good character. The story points and the plot points about them that make them stand out. Joe talked about how his guy got powers, and the unique way he handled that. But Ryan came back and said the same thing about his guy, and how he also had a unique situation with his abilities and how he dealt with them. What this comes down to for me is I think Ryan gave me a really good argument why his character might be the better character and the more interesting character. But the question was best side character. I think Joe gave me the most as to why his character is the best side character. He talked about the audience insert. He talks about being relatable to the audience. He talked about how he how the characters play off of him, how he's the best friend, how he's the best partner, and how he's a layered character, how he's not perfect. He has space to grow. So I think he gave me more as by the strict definition of the question, more about the best side character. Ryan did a great job defending his character, but just a little bit more technically from Joe. So I'm going to go with Joe on this one.
Damn, I was hoping not to have to be the tiebreaker. But yeah, this is tough because because both had really valid arguments. But I'm probably going to lean slightly towards Joe on this one. I did like what Ryan did. He brought all the points that he brought up, and he did a good job sort of explaining. But I think Joe sort of, as Kirk said, I think he sort of explained sort of why he's good as a side character, why he is good as a side character, and how he's good. But nothing against the debates. They both did a good job, and it was just that's fine margin of very closeness.
Very close.
which means we do get to speed round. So the speed round question I've got for you is, the way the speed round works is I'll ask the question, I'll ask it twice, and then Ryan and Joe to buzz in, they just say their name, and then they can give their answer, and then the other one gives their answer. But so yeah, that's how it's just so that we know who buzzes in first, and then that way the answers aren't actually sort of mushed together. So, but the question is, who is the best character in The Big Bang Theory? And I'll ask it again. Who is the best character in The Big Bang Theory?
Ryan.
Ryan.
I'm gonna go with Sheldon Cooper.
Joe, who are you going to go with?
I'm going to go with Leonard.
All right, so I've got Sheldon versus Leonard. Just because it's a speed round, I'm just going to keep you both on screen because no point trying to switch between everyone so quickly. But because Ryan buzzed in first, Ryan's going to go first on this one. 45 seconds is on the clock. And for your opening, try to focus more on your own character, and then you can do the rebuts in the later one. So your 45 seconds starts when you start talking.
Sheldon Cooper is the better character of The Big Bang Theory because when we are introduced to him, we are introduced to a man who doesn't want to change. He likes everything to be the same as always. And from there on in, throughout the length of his show, it's all been about his growth, learning to step outside of his shell, learning to be more open, to be more socially acceptable of everybody else around him, his roommate, to his next door neighbor Penny, to his circle of friends of Howard and of Raj, and even him growing to having a girlfriend, for him to becoming a more acceptable and whole person, not to mention his steely responses to all of his roommates' misery, and the fact he can't understand sarcasm is a nice, good comedic bit to keep following, and also his knocking bit. Penny, Penny, Penny. I mean, there's a certain quirks about Sheldon Cooper that makes you want to like this character, but at the same time, his rigidness makes you want to hate him.
Time.
Damn.
All right. Joe, your 45 seconds starts when you start talking.
Leonard is one of the best characters on the show, and the reason is he is someone who you really relate to. He is someone who wants to grow as a character, and he is someone who you kind of can see yourself in. While The Big Bang Theory doesn't really have a lot in terms of characterization, it does with Leonard. When you see him grow, when he is awkward and he doesn't really know how to interact with Penny, but then he grows to become this loving boyfriend to her, and he is kind of the crux of this group of friends. He is able to connect them together, and he has some of the funniest bits and the funniest lines in the entire show, with the whole entire thing where he's going to space and when he's in Antarctica and he's still thinking about what he can do for the love of his life and everything like this. He's a very relatable character and someone who is a genius, but he doesn't have the only thing about his genius is not the only thing that you can get away from this character. He is someone who he's a hopeless romantic and he has
All right, 30 seconds is on the clock. Ryan, it starts when you start talking.
Leonard may be a hopeless romantic, but at the same time, Leonard doesn't have much of a backbone to always stick up for himself. Sheldon easily runs over him all the time. And most of the funny things that happens with Leonard is because he's always trying to take care of Sheldon, or Sheldon is just that kind of stick in the mud that always makes Leonard miserable. And just because you can relate to a character doesn't make them always the best. What makes them best is how well they jam into the genre of the storytelling and what sort of writing and tools makes them reflect the best. Sheldon has more memorable quirks, not just of his knocks, but his bazinga, which is literally on TV shirts, him loving Leonard Nimoy. You son of a bitch.
Joe, you got 30 seconds on the clock. It begins when you start talking.
Sheldon is a problematic depiction of autistic people in general. When you talk about them, the actual advocacy groups that are ran by actual people who are on the autism spectrum, they say that Sheldon is a terrible and horrible representation, that he's more used as a joke. How can he be the best character when he is a problematic writing at best? Leonard, while you may say he doesn't have a backbone, that's something that we get to grow and we get to see him and he gets to stand up to Sheldon. And the whole thing is, and we get to see his relationship with Penny and his friends grow. And Sheldon is just very stagnant until the end. And even then, he only changes because of the problematic writing.
Time. All right. Ryan, 20 seconds is on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
if you want to say Leonard, if you want to say Sheldon is a problematic exaggeration of people with autism, Leonard is also a problematic exaggeration of the lonely nerd who hangs out at comic book stores and was always pining for the hot girl next door. Sheldon changes not because of the problematic writing also benefits Sheldon because he not only understands the whole world from his mother's point of view, from Leonard's point of view, he gets a girlfriend to where he understands he has to grow himself as a person.
Time. Joe, 20 seconds on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
Leonard isn't problematic because you don't have actual groups of people who feel like that coming forward and saying that this is a horrible character that no one can relate to, that is a terrible problematic depiction of us. Well, with Sheldon, the only reason he had to change the problematic writing does not make him a better character. It makes him a worse character because he's not relatable, and the people he's supposed to relate to can't even relate to him without saying change him.
Time. But yeah, they're not making it easy. And I'm going to go first, so I'm not forced to be made the tiebreaker of this one. I'm going to give my point to Ryan on this because he did manage to talk about both characters, and he brought up about the fact that how a lot of Leonard's best storylines is involving something that Sheldon has got Leonard into and all that. I mean, as much as I like Joe's argument, a lot of him was him being on and especially in the other two rounds, it was a lot of him being attacking on Sheldon. He didn't get a lot of points about his own character, and he got all his points in the start. Then he didn't really bring in a lot in his other two rounds, which I think may have hurt him a little bit. But it's just me. We'll see what everyone else thinks. Kirk, who are you going to give your point to and why?
Yeah, they both came out strong with their character. I think one guy gave me a little bit more about his character and his value to the show. And I hate that it has to come down to this, but I think I'm going to go with Ryan too. Ryan just gave me a little bit more about Sheldon both being a character with growth and with meaning, and also being the funnier of the characters. You know, Leonard, he mentioned about how most of Leonard's comedy springs from Shelton, is built around Shelton. And I think at the very end, you know, Joe got hooked up on Leonard or Sheldon not being as relatable, and you know the problematic writing, and I think those two kind of blended together. And I think Ryan at least shut down, you know, a portion of that, talking about how, you know, or Sheldon became more relatable. So I think, I think Ryan had the more complete argument on that, unfortunately. So I got to go with him.
Which means Ryan gets the point, and it means, and your winner is Ryan Payne. But yeah, before I bring in our winner for the interview, I'm going to bring in Joe. Look, Joe, you fought your hardest, but unfortunately you just didn't get the win today. How are you feeling?
I mean, I'm feeling deflated. I thought that I think what happened was I got too hung up on the problematic issue of Sheldon that I really didn't talk about my character enough. I think if I had talked more about Leonard and why he was better, I think there is something that stuck out afterwards where it's just like, and I realized afterwards, most of Leonard's comedy doesn't come from Sheldon, it comes from Penny. And so I could have shut that down, but I never brought it up. So I'm gonna be mad about myself for that. But yeah, so there's really nothing I can do about it.
But going forward, is there anyone out there you're looking to take on next in TV debate? Or
I think I'm going to take a step back from a while. I'm managing some competitors, so I think I'm going to focus on managing, and I'm going to focus on trivia for a bit. I'm still going to be around judging and stuff, but I think I just need to step away from the debate arena for a little bit and kind of just focus on judging. And I can be for my clients.
That is fine. I mean, the year's pretty much over. So yeah, it's not like we would have got you another match by the end of the year. So yeah, but I'm going to bring in the winner. Ryan, you managed to pull out the win. You're going to face Jay. How are you feeling?
Joe has got me parched, honestly. I can just feel my neck scratching behind the back of my throat, like my tongue going up against it. This fight was brutal. I mean, every question. I mean, I'm not going to say I thought I had certain questions won, but I knew with the last two questions around certain character, the best superhero theme song, best side character in the Arrowverse, I felt I had stronger arguments for, and sometimes it benefited me, sometimes it didn't. But damn, Joe, seriously, man, regardless of how the speed round went, I mean, Jesus Christ, I almost thought in those last 20 seconds you had me there, and I thought you were moving forward. And I do appreciate the fact that this was not an easily won victory, Joe. I am glad you pushed me to the second round. I am glad you were able to really show me why Cisco. I mean, trust me, for me, Cisco, I love Cisco, but by the time of season 3 Flash came around, he started to dip a little bit. So I liked how you were really showing the best parts of Cisco. That makes me kind of want to revisit the Arrowverse again. Oh, and just, man. Oh, my God. I'm just so exhausted at this moment. But I'm going to recharge my tanks moving forward, going up against, of course, this was never my contenders match. I'm going to be facing Jay down the line. One thing's for sure, if Jay's watching this, whenever he gets a chance to watch this, I want to let him know by the time we face each other, I'm not going to have the same holes in my strategy that you are watching right now. I'm going to tighten up my strategy. I'm going to make sure you don't see any weak spots in me. So by the time that first question kicks off, man, I'm going to put you on an uphill battle that only you can beat yourself on, not me. I'm going to be thinking 5 steps ahead. That's how much I'm going to think toward the championship match.
But I'm going to bring everyone back in here, and I'm going to talk to the judges for a little bit. Kevin, this was definitely a tough match to judge. How do you think this match went?
This was one of the hardest matches I think I've ever had to judge. It was every question was. If it were a boxing match, it would be 51-49. I had to, I got pages of notes that I can't even read. So yeah, you guys did awesome. Joe, don't beat yourself up. Come back strong next year. And Ryan, good luck in the next round, man.
And Kirk, I know you're not a big TV guy, but how did you feel about how the match went?
Oh man, what, matches like this are great from a viewership standpoint if you're sitting back and watching it. But as a judge, it sucks because you got two guys who played hard enough and did enough to win, and you got to take at least partial responsibility in one of them losing. And I hate to do that because both these guys are passionate. They both brought I agree with. I got a lot of these matches under my belt as far as judging goes, and this is one of the most evenly matched ones I've had. Joe definitely, neither of these guys deserve to lose. But obviously one competitor just edged it out. Joe, yeah, looking forward to come back. I hope you're not feeling discouraged by this and you'll come back strong because, you're going to, have success moving down the line. And I'm sure Ryan will agree with you. He'll owe you some credit, the improvements he sees in his game, because you pushed him so hard this match. So, I'm really excited about Ryan's moving forward and seeing what he does next round. I know he is going to put in the work to get better, get stronger. And him and Jay is going to be a great match. So congratulations, Ryan. You did great.
But yeah, which does bring us to the end of another match. But we're going to move forward. Next week, we've got another match featuring with some returning people. We've got Cameron, who took out me, and we've got Joe Farrelly, who took out Matt Graham. So they're in a match next week, which is going to be a lot of fun. So it's going to be a lot of fun to do, but until next week, just don't change that channel and just keep debating TV.